In the early 1990s, Asian women began to break almost 5 decades of painful silence to demand apology and compensation for the atrocities they and others suffered under Japanese military sexual slavery during the war in the 1930s and 1940s in the Asia-Pacific region. The sexual slavery experienced by the women who testified supports a finding that it constitutes crimes against humanity. The system of abductions, transportation, rapes, and enslavement of the women were widespread or systematic. In conclusion, the judges find that the emperor knew or should have known about the crimes of sexual violence committed in Nanking, and that he knew or should have known about the establishment and operation of the system of comfort stations. The emperor failed to fulfill his duty, and as such is criminally liable for all of the charges lodged in the indictments with respect to the rape and sexual slavery committed by the Japanese military from 1937 until the end of the war.
In addition to the individual criminal liability of the Emperor Hirohito, the judges have determined that the state of Japan is responsible under international law for the offences presented in the indictments in accordance with Article 4 of the Charter of this Tribunal. The Tribunal notes that women, either as individuals or as a group, had no voice or status equal to men at the time of the conclusion of those peace treaties, with the direct consequence that issues of military sexual slavery and rape were inevitably left unaddressed at that time and formed no part to the background to the negotiations and the ultimate resolution of the peace treaties. The judges continue that such gender blindness in international peace processes contributes to the continuing culture of impunity for crimes perpetrated against women in armed conflict. As such, the Tribunal finds that the individual victims of Japanese military sexual slavery have a right to claim compensation from the government of Japan.
Today, the judges have found Emperor Hirohito guilty of crimes against humanity.
It was a historic moment. For the first time, Emperor Hirohito was judged and found guilty. Thus, the greatest taboo of post-war Japanese society was broken. Hirohito's name topped the list of defendants in each country indictment. After long years of silence, we at last know who is responsible for Japan's military sexual slavery.
And the judges have found that the state of Japan bears state responsibility for the crimes committed against the comfort women and other crimes of sexual violence. The judges will now present their recommendations based upon the findings, and this will be the last section of the judgment. To fulfill its responsibility, the tribunal recommends that the government of Japan, 1, issue a full and frank apology, explicitly seeking the forgiveness of the comfort women and taking legal responsibility and giving guarantees of non-repetition.
Enact legislation and take all necessary and appropriate measures to compensate the victims and survivors and those entitled to recover as a result of the violations declared herein.
The Tribunal further recommends that the former Allied nations immediately declassify all military and governmental records concerning the establishment and the operation of the comfort system and the reasons why it was not prosecuted before the IMTFE.
The tribunal will now stand adjourned until March 8th.
It took over 2 hours to read the summary of the findings. In this summary findings, only the emperor's criminal liability and the state responsibility of Japan were confirmed. The final verdict, in which other military officials will be judged, is to be delivered at a later date.